This is a tutorial on the ZwoBot Strobo device. ZwoBot is a suite of Max for Live devices that allows you to create visuals inside Ableton Live. If you're new to ZwoBot, I'd recommend you go back and watch some of my earlier tutorials, and I'll put a link to those in the top right corner of the screen now. And if you're interested in buying ZwoBot, there's a link in the description. So the Strobo device creates a strobe effect. I've already connected it to my player and switched it on, and I've got this image loaded up into my video deck. Nothing's happening at the moment because we need to change some of these settings to make it work. This device has a built-in BPM control. What that means is it's going to ignore the master beat control that's on your ZwoBot player. For example, I've currently got this set to 1 note, and you can see it's creating this flashing effect. I can change this master beat control and it's not impacting this at all, because this BPM control is going to override this, so I can keep this set to off. We've got a color setting here which will control the color of the strobe effect. It's currently set to 0, which is just black, so that's why you're just seeing this bit of black flashing up. Whereas if I were to change this, you can see we're getting a brief bit of colour. So 0 is black, and then if you turn it all the way up to 255, that's white. I'm going to keep that at 0 for now. So the BPM controls how often this flash happens. And here we've got this shutter time dial, so this controls how long the black, in this case, will stay on the screen. So when it's turned right down, it's very brief, whereas if you turn it right up, you can see the black stays on screen a lot longer. This control here will set the colour to change randomly in sync with this BPM dial. So basically the colour is going to change every half a note here. So if I want the colour to change a bit slower, I can move it down to 1 note. It's going to change every time that flash comes up. So each time the flash comes up, it's going to be a different colour. But if you want to manually select the colour, you can turn that off and choose a colour instead. By default, we have the underlying visual, and then the flash comes up for however long your shutter time is set to. But if you inverse it, the flash is on there by default, and then the normal underlying image is the one that pops up for however long the shutter time is set to. So it basically reverses the effect. So you can see now we're getting a brief flash of the original image because it's set to inverse, whereas if I put it back to the default, it's the normal image with a flash of the colour. So whichever one you want to be on screen for longer for, you can use this to control. So if you want the original image to be on screen for longer, you can turn it off, but if you want the original image to be the one that's flashing up, you can turn this inverse setting on. Under here we have a manual trigger, so if you don't want it to be synced to the BPM, you can turn this BPM control off, and then every time you hit this is when the strobe effect is going to come on. So you can manually trigger it instead if you want. And this manual trigger button also has sound reactivity, which means we can have the strobe effect respond to the audio instead of being synced to the BPM. So I can set that to high, which means now it's going to be triggered by any higher frequencies in the track. And I can also set it to low, which means it's going to be triggered by any lower frequencies. In the bottom left hand corner we have our usual transparency and blend mode controls, so this button controls the overall transparency of the effect. And then here we have a selection of blend modes to choose from.